Hey YouTube, welcome to day 13. 2 more videos left in my challenge. Wow. I've learned a lot from this, and I'm going to do a wrap-up video after it's over, just sharing what I've learned. But I'm really glad that I did this challenge, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. But anyway, I'm not done yet. Let's talk about podcasting. I've had several questions throughout the challenge about what I use for my podcast. This is not going to be a tutorial. I'm not going to be going into detail about how to podcast, but if you want me to do that, let me know in the comments. But what I'm going to be doing is showing you what I use, and I'm going to give you an idea of what it cost me. I'm going to talk about some things that you'll want to do in the beginning and some things that you can hold off on if maybe you're on a budget or you feel overwhelmed and you feel like you got to do everything at first. No, you don't. Sometimes you just have to start. That's a big lesson, I think, for a lot of you. Just start. You can always grow and improve things later. So Seth Godin put out this blog post back in October, and it was talking about how podcasting is the new blogging. With everybody being so busy these days, it's a great way to absorb content on the go. I know I listen to them all the time now. If I'm taking a bubble bath or if I'm in the car, because I live in a big city. And so sometimes I get stuck in traffic, and it's nice to have something to listen to when you're in a long car ride. I listen to them when I'm working out. Just many times throughout the day, I find myself listening to podcasts. It's just a great way to promote your content online. It's just another way to get in front of people. What I've learned is the people that watch your videos or the people that read your blog are oftentimes not the same people that listen to your podcast. So the great thing about doing a podcast is that you can get in front of people that may never discover your YouTube channel or your blog. Now, Seth, got a lot of exposure for this post because, he's Seth Godin, but I want to give a shout out to Eileen Smith, because Eileen was talking about how podcasting was going to be the next big thing years and years and years ago. And I don't feel she's gotten the credit that she deserves. So I want to call her out, because before a lot of these big name people started putting out courses and videos on podcasting, she was doing podcasting. And I found her back in like 2009 or 10, and she was talking about it back then. And I was like, podcasting. I wanted to give her her dues because she deserves it. So let's talk about pricing. The great thing about podcasting is that it's very inexpensive. There's 2 things you might have to buy up front. You might need a mic if you don't have one already. I talked about what I used in my gear video. I used the Blue Yeti mic, but I'm looking to upgrade. And thank you to everyone who gave me suggestions. I really do appreciate that. So if you already have a mic, the only thing you need to consider is a host, a podcast host. So why would you need a host? Can't you just upload the file to your website? You sure can. But 2 things that you get with a host. When you submit your podcast to iTunes, Stitcher, and all the other people out there, the players out there, you need an XML file. I know it sounds techie, but this is the file that iTunes reads to see when you have a new show. So once you submit your feed to iTunes and all the other places, you don't have to submit to them again. So the next time you upload your next show to your host, it'll automatically go out to all those places automatically. So podcasting is great. It might take you a little time to set it up first, but once you do that, it gets easier and easier and faster once you start doing your shows. You just upload your show and go on about your day. Now, Libsyn has several different packages, and it just really depends on how big your podcasting files are. Now, for me, I probably could get by with the $5 a month plan because my shows are very short. But if you have very long shows and you podcast weekly, you might need some of the larger plans. It just really depends on the size of your WAV or MP3 file or whatever you use. I'm on the $15 a month plan, but I could probably downgrade. The other thing a host gives you is a player. So if you don't have a premium subscription like I do, then you can use their player to embed it on your blog. Now, their player is pretty basic, but hey, it gets the job done. That's what I used to use for my To Create podcast. Libsyn also gives you some other things like a podcast page and stuff like that, but I don't use it. Since I have a website, I just embed my podcast onto my website. I don't use their page. The other reason you don't want to host a podcast on your website is bandwidth. So if your podcast starts getting popular and people start downloading your shows, that eats up bandwidth on your host. And these hosts always tell you that bandwidth is unlimited until it's not. Most hosts are really not unlimited. They always have a little asterisk in there. If you go over a certain amount, they will start charging you. So it's best to have a host. And I will put links to everything that I'm mentioning down in the description. I don't know if Libsyn has an affiliate program. I'll have to check into that because as a user, I wouldn't mind, being an affiliate for them. Okay, so let's talk about recording your show. Now, this is the easiest part. I use Audacity. And I've been using Audacity since day one. I started using it when I used Windows, and I now use it with my iMac. So what you're looking at here is my show for my Passive Shirt Profits podcast. So I have my intro on one track, I have my talking on the second track, and then I have my outro on the bottom track. Let me show you how easy it is to record. So you just come up here and click record. Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3. Test. So let's just say you want to remove something from your podcast. You made a mistake. You just select it and hit delete. And they have a lot of different other features such as removing noise. When I had my Windows computer, the tower was so loud and I would have this humming in the background. But you can do all of that with Audacity. You can remove the noise, you can add bass, you can add treble, you can compress it. For a free software program, this thing does a lot. Now, a lot of Mac users prefer to use GarageBand. I used to use GarageBand for other things. I don't know if you all remember the little cheesy rap that I had on this channel. It was me playing a couple of chords and you heard a little drum beat in the background. I actually did that with GarageBand, but I've never used GarageBand for recording my podcast. I know Flynn does for his, but there's no reason other than I just don't. I've always just been comfortable with Audacity. So if you're a Mac user, you also might want to check into GarageBand. But when you're done with your podcast, all I do is go to File, Export, and I just export it as an MP3 file. Now it's ready to be uploaded to my host. So then I just log into my Libsyn account, go to Content, Add New Episode, upload the file, and I'm done. So when you're done, you can either take their player that they use and embed it into your website. They give you the code, or you can use a premium player like I do. I'll talk about that in a second. But if you don't have a website, you can just use their podcasting page if you want and share that on social media. I have a friend and she has a podcast and she doesn't have a website and she just uses their podcast player page. Now, when it comes to submitting your podcast to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and all those, you have to follow the instructions for each site for submitting. But the bottom line is you just come over to Destinations here in Libsyn, and this is a very important file. This is your feed. This is what iTunes reads, this is what Stitcher reads, and this is how they know when you have a new show. So once you've set everything up and they have your feed, you don't have to go back to those sites anymore. They will just pick up your show from this feed. So Libsyn is constantly updating this feed anytime you add new content. So when you're ready to submit your podcast to iTunes, you go to podcastsconnect.apple.com and you sign in with your Apple username if you have one. If you don't, you can create one. And then you literally just paste your feed here and it'll check it to make sure you filled everything out. I know with mine, I had forgotten a couple of things, but I just had to go into the settings in Libsyn and make sure that I had added what they needed. Like it was some descriptions and tags and stuff like that. So once iTunes approves everything, you just have to wait about 48 hours and your show is going to be live. Now, you have to create some podcast art and all of that stuff, so you'll have to submit that, but you can use something like Canva for that if you don't have Photoshop. But once you've submitted it to iTunes, then you can do the same for Stitcher, Google Play, and all the others. Now, I will say this, there might be some plugins out there for WordPress and some other services that will automate some of this stuff. I do everything manually. Maybe it's just because I like control and I don't want to use and rely on too many automated processes. So I do pretty much everything manually. But once you set up your podcast the first time, it's easy and fast after that. You just record your show, upload it, and move on with your day. Now, I have an intro for my podcast. Now, this is one of the things you don't have to do right away. When I started my Passive Shirt Profits podcast, I believe I used the music from the one I created in GarageBand, if I'm not mistaken. So I didn't have a professional intro at first. You don't have to do this at first. This is one of the reasons people say, oh, I don't want to start yet because I don't have a professional intro. You don't need that in the beginning. You can always do that stuff later. Stop looking for these reasons to not start. You can always improve at a later time. For my intro, I used a company called Music Radio Creative. Pat Flynn recommended this, and of course, he's like the first client on their page, but they were pretty inexpensive, I thought, for what I got. I think I paid, I want to say like $60, but you write out the script. So you tell them what you want them to say. You tell them the type of music you want in your intro. And I told them that I wanted something that was a little upbeat, kind of like hip hop or whatever. They got as close as they could with that. And you tell them the type of voice you want, so you can pick which voice, a woman, man, accent, whatever. And then they send you the file, and then you can listen to it. They had made one mistake in mine, so I sent it back to them, and then they sent it back to me. So they send you a couple of different files, and then they send you like an instrumental part for your outro. So that's what I use for the outro at the end of my podcast. So in case you want to listen to my intro, here it is.
Welcome to the Passive Shirt Profits Podcast with Lisa Irby, where you'll discover how to earn passive income selling t-shirts using free print-on-demand sites like Merch by Amazon. To enroll in a course and learn quickly, go to passiveshirtprofits.com/courses.
So yeah, that was the intro. It was professional, a little fun, had a little beat. I wanted something with a little positive vibe, and you can describe the type of music that you want. Now, maybe the process has changed a little bit since I did mine. I did mine, I think, in 2017. So it may have changed a bit, but I was very, very happy with them. And recently, they've been sending free loops to your email. So that's an added bonus I guess they've been offering for their customers. So that's pretty cool. Media player. So I could have used Libsyn's media player. So after you upload your podcast, they give you some code to paste the player into your site. It's very, very basic. I wanted something a little bit more professional, but this is something that you can do later. If you're on a budget, you're like, Lisa, I can't afford this, then don't do it now. But I am using Pat Flynn's Smart Podcast Player. And Pat Flynn really did help with his content and helping me get started. So I was really happy to support his player. I am an affiliate for him. I was glad to see him finally have an affiliate program. So once again, I'll have all the links in the description. Just understand, if you sign up, I do get a commission. I have to disclose that. I chose the $8 a month package just to save a little bit, but I'm going to show you what it looks like on your website. So this is the player. This is what it looks like on like the landing page on your website, but it's a widget for WordPress. And so you can just customize the widget, the colors and all of that, but it's very, very, very easy to install. And it also looks good on mobile browsers as well. That's what I like about it. So this is the main player where people can search your shows, they can play it, they can rewind 15 seconds, they can fast forward 60 seconds, and there's some other options here where they can subscribe. Let me show you what it looks like on the actual page. So that's the main player, and this is the individual player. That's what it looks like. And once again, they can speed it up, they can rewind, they can fast forward, they can download it, which is nice. For $8 a month, I think it's great value. That's pretty much what I use, you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments. My setup is very, very simple. And I know a lot of people use like Blueberry plugins and stuff like that to make things faster or more convenient. I didn't want to use a whole lot of plugins. I kind of like that I do a lot of the stuff manually. Really, the only plugin that I use is Pat Flynn's Smart Podcast Player. Hope you enjoyed. See you tomorrow.